Hello my fellow YouTubers and subscribers, and welcome to this review of a video game. Now this review has been long in the making because the game has been long in the making. Today's review, The Last of Us Part 2. The very newly released sequel to the very successful original Last of Us, which the original was 2013, I believe. About 7 years ago. Sorry, 7 years ago. The Last of Us was remastered for the PS4, and I have played the PS4 version. I have reviewed the first Last of Us, if you wish to check it out. Today's review of The Last of Us 2 is going to be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't played the game and don't want it spoiled, I would suggest you click away from the video now and come back when you've played the game, or unless you have played the game, or if you just don't give a shit about spoilers, then that's fine. I mean, a lot of the game has been spoiled, sadly, online anyway, so maybe you do know what happens. Anyway, let's begin. Okay, so The Last of Us 2. Well, it's kind of a bit complicated, so if you give me a sec, I will try and explain the plot as best as I can. Basically, it's set about 5 years after the events of the first one. Joel and Ellie have settled down in Jackson, and then a unfortunate incident happens, and then Ellie embarks on a quest for vengeance, and it takes her to Seattle, where she discovers the existence of this, essentially this militia group known as the WLFs, or the Wolves, as they're called. As well, we discover the existence of a religious cult known as the Seraphates, and the two factions are going against each other. And Ellie is basically going on a quest for a sort of a personal vengeance, as I said. And on Ellie's quest for vengeance, she is going after this woman known as Abby, who is a member of the Wolf militia group, and it turns out that Abby has quite the connections to something in the past. I'll go into what that is later on, and then it's basically about Ellie and Abby kind of fighting it out, really. That's where it all leads up to. The Last of Us Part 2, if I were to go into any more detail, it would be a bit complicated, so I'm gonna do it piece by piece. This, in short, is a very polarizing game. I have to say, this story-wise, the game really kind of shocked me. It went in directions I did not expect. Whether that's good or bad, well, I guess you'll find out. I've written down a list, actually, of pros and cons, and there's a lot of parallels in this as well, but I'll go into that in a sec. So this might be a long review. I do apologize, but I have to talk about everything in detail, hence the spoiler warning at the start. And the list is kind of very even. I have very mixed feelings about The Last of Us Part 2. In short, the first game is a lot better. For me, the story it goes in really weird directions that I didn't expect. For one thing, halfway through the story, you play as this other character known as Abby, as I've mentioned earlier, and you actually get to play her side of the story in the second half of the game, which nobody expected because they never marketed this, but I'll go more into that later. First of all, let's talk about what I liked. The gameplay. The gameplay is actually a little bit better than it was in the first one. It's kind of more fluid. You have to dodge now, you get to jump as well, and you even get to go prone, so you get to crawl on the floor underneath vehicles and everything. And so the gameplay is certainly a lot more fluid, and I think Ellie controls a lot better than she did in the first one. I mean, Ellie was younger in the first one, so her melee wasn't very good. But in this one, it's much better. And there's stealth as well. You can go in the long grass, and you can sort of distract people from the grass. You could even like quickly throw bottles at enemies as they're running towards you. So that aspect of the game, the fluidity of the gameplay, is great, and that is the most consistent thing throughout this game. The next point, the graphics. Well, the graphics are amazing, and the cinematics. You don't have to play the game to see how good it looks. I mean, look at this on the front. Look at Ellie on the front. She looks amazing, and on the back, you can see the level of detail that has gone into the look of this game. So I certainly applaud the cinematics and the graphics. It does at times feel like you are playing through a film. And as you're exploring Seattle, I mean, you just marvel at the designs and everything. It looks fantastic, and all the characters look really well rendered. I I like the look of it. Other things, again, this is a spoiler review, I warned you. We get to see a bit more of Joel in the game, not in the way we expect. But we get to see Joel sing. Yeah, it's finally nice. At the very start of the game, we got to see him sing. We got to hear him sing, sorry. Which was lovely, because in the first game, Joel and Ellie talked so much about what they wanted to be. And Joel said, well, when he was younger, he wanted to be a singer. So it was lovely. That was a lovely little moment there where he sang to her and he played his guitar. And it was at the very start of the game as well. It was a beautiful moment, and it kind of showed their relationship and how far they'd come since the first game. So I appreciated that from Naughty Dog. Speaking of Ellie and Joel, the flashbacks we get with Joel are great. I mean, Joel sadly isn't in the game in the same way as he is in the first one. Joel is in the game. You can't play as him, but he's certainly a part of the story. It's this lovely flashback when Joel and Ellie go to this abandoned museum, and then Ellie puts on a helmet and she's imagining being in space. Such a beautiful moment, and he does that for her birthday, and it's a lovely moment. And also that moment had a reference to Sarah, which I really appreciated. His real biological daughter who died in the first one. He said that Sarah used to drag him to all these museums, which I thought was lovely. And it was just a lovely little moment to add more to their relationship. There's a party in the bar and something happens, and then Ellie nearly gets into an altercation and Joel steps in to defend her. I thought that was a nice moment as well. So Joel got his fair share of moments in the game. As well, another thing to mention about Joel, the opening scene. I really loved the opening scene with him and Tommy when he's telling Tommy about saving Ellie at the end of the first game and how that's affected everything and whatnot. And yeah, that was also very well done. I liked the way the game opened. It drew me in, and it was nice to kind of recall back from the end of the first one. The character of Dina. Yes, Dina. I like Dina very much. I think she's a good character. I was a bit uncertain about where her loyalties lied at first, but no, she is true of heart and she is a good person. And it seems as though because I remember watching that clip of them kiss at the party, and I thought Dina was going to be a bit of a player, but no, Dina is actually quite nice. I mean, she was with Jesse before, the guy, and now she's with Ellie. So I guess Dina is bisexual. But yeah, no, Dina's a good character. She's very sweet, and I like her relationship with Ellie, and you can tell Ellie is totally smitten with her. And it's nice to have a character of the LGBT community in this game, and I like that Ellie is of that. I mean, you would expect it, because Ellie's very, very much hard. She's a hard woman, and she's a hard girl. She's a tomboy, I'd say. Jesse is good. He ends up getting Dina pregnant, although he doesn't have much to do with that because he dies, sadly. He's not really in the game too much, but when he's there, he's quite good. He's a nice character, although he's kind of underdeveloped. He's just basically written in as the father of the child. That's kind of it. And there's this whole thing about Joel thinks that Jesse and Ellie are going to get together, and then that doesn't happen because Joel discovers that Ellie is gay and loves Dina. So, which is really interesting. I liked that flashback at the end with Joel. I forgot to mention when he says, "Oh well, she be looking ahead of you." That was really lovely. Sadly, Jesse's death was very sudden. He was in the theatre and then he was shot by Abbey, I think. Also, in terms of the end of the game, the fact that Ellie doesn't kill Abbey, I was okay with that. Some people might flip their shit and go, "Oh, she spent all this game going on revenge for her, and yet she doesn't do that." It's like, well, I think it would kind of have defaced the point of her character if she actually killed her, because think about it this way. Ellie is not incompassionate, she does have compassion, she does care, and she knows that Joel wouldn't want her to live the rest of her life filled with revenge, and that she had to kind of move on from Joel, from what happens to Joel, and then to let go of that. And it was a very powerful moment. I mean, when Ellie has killed certain people, it's been very traumatic. Like, when she kills Abby's friends, that's very traumatic, and when she kills Nora, that's very traumatic as well. So it kind of just shows that Ellie is three-dimensional. She's not a completely ruthless killer, hell-bent on revenge. She was, but then, she sort of had a realization, and then she lets her go, and that's it, and that's the end of it. I kind of like that. The characters of Yara and Lev, I like them. They mainly feature in Abbey's campaign, but Yara and Lev are good characters. They were members of the Seraphades, but they have since essentially left their group because Lev is has committed sacrilege against them because Lev is actually called Lily, and Lev is a transgender character, or is a character who would want to be a boy. Lev has shaved his hair off and stuff, and I think it's really interesting to have another character like that. So I think this game definitely caters to the LGBT plus community, and I like that. Lev is a very interesting character, and there is a bit of tension between their mother as well. We never actually see their mother, but the fact that, you know, because of what is happening with Lev, there's a lot of emotional drama there. There is a lot of emotion in this story. I mean, it is The Last of Us, so, you know, there's bound to be a lot of emotion. Yeah, and Yara is good. Yara sadly gets very attacked. Her bones get broken by a hammer. She is assaulted, but then Abbey chooses to help them in the end and turns away from her group, the Wolves, which I suppose was kind of interesting, but I mean, I'll get on to Abbey in a minute when I come to my negatives of the game. Yes, I very much like Yara and Lev. I think Lev is my preferred character of the two, but I thought Yara was good too. It was kind of sad that Yara died though. The actual infected enemies that you fight in the game are very much like the first game, in some cases worse. I mean, the clickers can hear you much more clearly than they did last time. Even if you move the analog stick all the way, they'll hear you. So you've got to really do it lightly. It's tricky. It's trickier this time. There's also these massive bloaters. I mean, you thought the bloaters were huge in the first game. We've got even bigger versions in this one. We've got the shamblers, and my goodness, they are hard to kill. There's even one moment when you're in Abbey's campaign when you have to fight this humongous infected thing, and then there's another infected person that comes out of it. You know, think of the film Alien, when the alien comes out of John Hurt's chest. It's kind of like that. It's really tough to kill some of these enemies, but that makes the game that much more thrilling. So I think the enemies are much better here. Also, you fight human enemies like the Seraphates and the wolves as well. And speaking of wolves, there's actually these killer dogs that you fight as well. They can be a bit tricky. You've got to listen in to their scent. You know, they can track you from a while away. They are pretty deadly, and some of the enemies can overwhelm you at times. So I think they've done a good job at increasing the level of enemies that you have to fight as well. I like that. I'll go more into the character of Abbey in just a sec, but one thing I did like about Abbey was the flashbacks, and her dad Jerry was actually a doctor, and he was one of the doctors who was going to operate on Ellie at the end of the first game. So I thought that was kind of a clever tie-in. I liked that. It was a good way to kind of develop Abby's character, I guess. Even though I don't like Abby's character, I'll just say that now. But it made sense as well, like why Abby's going after Joel, which I will talk about in a bit. But I like the flashbacks with Abby and her dad, and I liked again how it tied in very nicely to the first game, so that was nice. And pretty much the whole first half of the game, which is Ellie's campaign, I think is awesome. I think it was near enough great. I mean, I won't say it was perfect, but I really enjoyed playing as Ellie in the first half of the game, and I thought that that's what the whole game was going to be like, but I was wrong. Now we come on to the cons, and yeah, this is going to be an interesting discussion, so please bear with me. The Abbey campaign. Now, this is the biggest issue of the game for me. The character of Abbey, it makes sense why she is doing what she's doing and how integral she is to the story. She basically kills Joel. Yeah, because Joel killed her father. Okay, fine, I can understand that. Motivations are clear. But the fact that you play as her for half the game, what? I mean, that was a complete curveball. I mean, at the end of the day, the marketing did not serve this game very well. They changed so much after the marketing. I mean, for one thing, I kind of predicted Joel was going to die, but even so, the marketing had Joel in a lot of the trailers and everything. That moment when he says, "You didn't think I was going to let you do this on your own." They changed that in the game and they actually have Jesse say that to Ellie instead, which was kind of a bummer. But in terms of the Abbey character, I mean, I don't mind that she kills Joel. I mean, okay, yeah, it's a shame, but it makes sense in terms of the story and her motivations. But I never asked to play as her. I never wanted to play as that character for so long. If it was for a brief moment, fine. But I just don't think that the gamers are going to care for her because she kills Joel. A lot of people are going to be upset about that, and probably are upset about that. I can deal with the fact that she kills Joel, but that her side of the campaign was just tedious. I mean, we get to this scene where Abby and Ellie meet in the theatre, and then the game sort of goes back. It sort of cuts back to Abby, like, in Seattle, day 1, 2, and 3. It's just like Ellie's campaign, but it's told from the other side. I think what's going on here is that they're kind of influenced by a movie. The movie is The Godfather Part 2. They're influenced by that. And they kind of do this thing of telling 2 parallel narratives, which is kind of weird in a way. It threw me off completely, because I thought the whole game was going to be with Ellie, but no, only half the game was with Ellie, which was really quite bizarre. And after a while, Abby's campaign really just starts to get tedious, and I just lose interest. I'm like, can I just go back to Ellie now? I'm really bored. I just don't care about this character. Again, she kills Joel, one of the most beloved characters in this series. I don't think the audience are going to care. I don't think they'd want to play as her. I'm not saying they should have cut her out of the story. I'm just saying we should have cut out playing as her. And also, it makes the game too long. It really does. It makes the game far too long. We were promised a different game from Naughty Dog. We really were. And we got something really quite different to that. I mean, look at this steelbook. We've got Ellie on the front, Joel on the back. And considering how little Joel is in the game, that's bizarre. Abby is nowhere to be seen on this. And also on this, Abby is nowhere to be seen. So she wasn't marketed as a playable character. If they'd have actually said in the marketing that there's this new character that you play as, Abby and everything, and I would have sort of been okay with that. I would have sort of maybe forgiven this a bit more. It just feels like a bit of a twist that will just divide everyone. And I think this is the thing that is dividing so many people about this game. I just did not care for this character. I did not care for her story. And I mean, the fact that she kind of changes sides and sort of sides with Yara and Lev, I mean, that was the only moment when I did kind of care for her. But she kills Joel, so right there, you can be very unsympathetic towards her. Also, her friends in the game aren't that interesting either. Manny, Mel, Isaac, and Owen, of course. There's also this really weird sex scene with Abby and Owen, which comes completely from out of left field. They're having this argument, and then it turns into a passionate love scene. They literally like strip off and start having sex. It's out of nowhere, completely out of the blue. Everyone's roasting about it. You know, I don't blame them. It was really jarring, to be honest. It was really jarring. Also, Abby is an interesting character as well, because she's kind of built like muscular, very muscular, and her character design does look very masculine in a way. So some people have assumed that she might be some kind of transgender character or something, but that's never referenced in the story. But she is built, and they do keep going on about that. But again, she was just a really dull character to play as. I mean, again, I liked the way she tied into the story, but it was just tedious. And again, this game is 25 hours long. It's way too long. It didn't need to be that long. It's like 2 games in one. If you'd have cut out the Abbey campaign, you would have had a pretty great, pretty solid, like 10-hour experience, kind of like the first one. But it just drags out too long. After a while, I find myself not wanting to go back and play the Abbey levels. I just don't think I will be doing that anytime soon. I didn't like the outcome of Dina and Ellie's relationship. I kind of wish that they'd stayed together. I kind of wish that Dina and the baby were still in the farm when Ellie returned after the whole fight with Abby. But no, sadly not. I mean, it didn't bother me too much, but it would have been nice to I've seen I've seen a bit of happiness at the end. There really isn't a lot of happiness in this game. I know it's called The Last of Us, but even in the first game, there were some lovely moments. I think the happiest moment is probably the moment when Joel's singing, or the moment when Ellie and Joel go to the Space Museum. Other than that, it's very bleak and very depressing. Also, the fact that when we get back to the theatre again, because the narrative goes round again in a loop, and when we play as Abby, we do eventually end up in the theatre. But then we have to fight Ellie, and that was annoying. I kind of wish that at that point we could change back to Ellie and fight Abby, but no. What the game wants us to do is actually have them fight each other. So we play as Abby fighting Ellie, and then at the end of the game we play as Ellie fighting Abby. So they fight twice. So okay, fair enough. I can see what they did there, but that theatre fight, it felt wrong because I love Ellie so much as a character, and it felt wrong me fighting her as someone else. It just didn't feel right. You know what I mean? Of course I haven't addressed the elephant in the room, which is Joel's death. Joel's death was not really much of a shock to me. I kind of expected it to happen. I think someone leaked it online anyway. But I didn't expect Joel to die so early in the game. It's a shame we didn't get another journey with Joel and Ellie. I kind of wish that we got a bit more of that, but at the very least, Joel is in the game in some capacity. I mean, he's in it, but he's not in it, if that makes sense. We only see him really in flashbacks, and it's nice to see him at least. It's nice that Troy Baker comes back, but we can't play as Joel, and I know his story was the first game, but in terms of his death, I didn't mind it. It was kind of brutal the way it went, and it's sad that Ellie had to watch that happen. And again, it wasn't unpredictable, but in my list, I put that kind of in the middle of the line because I'm on the one hand, I'm kind of okay with it, and on the other hand, I'm kind of wishing that we had more Joel. But because again, on the back of the steelbook, Joel is there, you know, so it's very misleading. I think it's very misleading. As well, there are a lot of parallels in the narrative of these two characters. In both sections of the Abby and Ellie story, we have a love scene, although Ellie's love scene is far more tame than Abby's one, I'll say that. We have two pregnant characters, Mel and Dina. We have two father stories, like the Joel and Ellie story, and then the Jerry and Abby part as well. Both Abby and Ellie are getting revenge for someone they love who has died. Abby fights Ellie, Ellie fights Abby, Abby kills Joel, and Ellie kills Mel and Owen. Yeah, those are kind of just a few of the parallels that you'll find in the narrative as they go along. I mean, I wasn't sad when Abby's friends died. I mean, I didn't care about Owen. Owen just seemed like a bit of a dick anyway. Mel suddenly turned on Abby as well at some certain point. I suppose Manny was okay, but so as you can see, The Last of Us Part 2 is a very mixed bag. It's incredibly a mixed bag. It's going to divide a lot of people like it already is. For me, the first game was a lot better. I still think as an experience, as a gaming experience, it is fun. It is fun to play through, but the second half of the game is weaker than the first half, and I found myself getting a bit bored of it as it went on. But Ellie's levels are awesome. It did throw me, but maybe if I played it again, I probably wouldn't be as worried about it. So there's just as much good things for me as there are bad things. It's too long. It didn't need to be 25 hours long. It's kind of like two games in one. I said this with a friend of mine yesterday. We were talking on Facebook. It would have been nice maybe if we got a level with Joel and Tommy as an expansion pack. You know, like in the first game, they had the Left Behind campaign. They could have done that with maybe Abby's levels. They could have done that as a separate thing rather than being in the same narrative. Or do that with Joel, to have a level with Joel. See, that would have been great, but I just think there were some missed opportunities, and I just think the story went in directions that nobody wanted. Yeah, it really threw me. Actually, it was a very polarizing game, and I think it will always be. It will always be. But it looks great. It's fun to play as. The controls are awesome. The gameplay is still fun, but it's the Abby character. Playing as Abby doesn't interest me, to be quite honest. I never asked to play as her. So, taking all that into consideration, again, I've been thinking about this game for quite a few days. I finished it a few days ago, and I've needed a lot of time to process it because it's like the movie Star Wars: The Last Jedi. It was so polarizing. I just couldn't make my mind up on it, on how I actually felt about it. I knew I liked things in it, but I knew there were things I didn't like. So, I think I've come to a decision. I think I've finally come to a decision on how I'd rate the game. And also taking into account that the first one is way better, I will give The Last of Us Part 2 a 7 out of 10. I think it's decent, you know. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's great. I think it's decent, but it's not the game that we were promised. It could have been a lot better, and again, that second half of the game doesn't interest me that much. So that's it. That's my review of The Last of Us Part 2. I'm sorry this has been a long video, but there have been a lot of spoilers to talk about. So please comment down below, let me know what you think of this game. Have you played it? Are you going to play it? What's your opinion on it? Because I think there's going to be a lot of controversial opinions about this game, because it is a very controversial game. I was expecting to rate this a bit more than a 7, but yeah, maybe this is the first time Naughty Dog have really slipped for me. But because, like, it's, you know, it's not as good as some of, or any of the Uncharted games. I mean, it's probably a bit better than Uncharted Lost Legacy because it's longer and there's a bit more to do. But yeah, all the Uncharted games are better than this, and the first Last of Us. So this is I guess you could say, yeah, it is a bit of a disappointment, but I enjoyed it in various areas. And if they do a third, then yeah, I'll play it. I'll be excited, but probably not as excited. I think maybe this game was overhyped, thinking about it now. But the way this game ends, there is room for more story. I think there is room for a third Last of Us, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, I've been talking for long enough, so thank you all for watching and listening. Please leave your comments down below, and as always, I'm Mr. Tavares 11.